We got with us Ross Barkan, journalist, author of a new book called The Prince about Andrew Cuomo. And he is here to tell us all things Andrew related. We got your Andrew Yang. We got your Andrew Cuomo. Maybe we could next time, or someone in the stream want to create, do a hashtag which Andrew quiz. We could do that. We could quiz each other which Andrew said it. I asked you before who you thought was better for the left, Adams or Yang. I guess worse for the left, right? Could you share your thoughts on that?
Sure. So my view of this is, I don't know if it's unconventional, but it's one that not everyone agrees with. And that's that Andrew Yang would be a better scenario for the left, for DSA, for leftists, even for the professional left, for the NGO left, WFP, than Eric Adams. Fundamentally, Eric Adams would be a much stronger mayor, stronger in the sense that he has deep ties to institutions and neighborhoods. He is backed by labor unions. He has been steeped in the city for a very long time. He's very hard to intimidate. He's very hard to organize against. He would be the city's second Black mayor. He's a former police captain. He is very smart about weaponizing identity against his critics. I give you an example of, a big issue in New York is placard abuse, where, police officers, people who work for the city, park illegally with their placards everywhere. It causes a real hazard for a lot of people, certainly for cyclists and for pedestrians. Eric Adams is a notorious placard abuser, and he's the Brooklyn Borough president right now, so he has many placards to give out. And he was called out for this, and Eric Adams, said in a very cynical way, look, the white borough president got to abuse his placards. Why are you attacking the Black borough president for doing the same? Eric gets to do this too. So, he's very good at weaponizing identity. And I think that's one issue for the left as it becomes very identity focused, is that it has to be aware that bad faith actors are going to take that sword and bludgeon the left with it whenever it can. Eric Adams is very good at that. So, he's also someone who will seek revenge against people who've wronged him. There are many revenge, political revenge, not violence, but
hit him with a placard. He could take a placard to their heads and do some damage.
Or simply, as mayor, support candidates in primaries, turn organized labor against the WFP or against DSA. Several of his top allies have had very big, nasty fights with the left. One of them is a city councilwoman named Lori Cumbo, who is the sworn enemy of Jabari Brisport, who's like the very exciting young DSA state senator.
Gotta get him back on, yeah.
Ask him about Lori Cumbo. So Lori Cumbo is a top Eric Adams ally. If Eric Adams becomes mayor, I would be shocked if Lori Cumbo doesn't have a job in the administration, maybe a high-ranking job. Jesse Hamilton was his successor in the state Senate. He joined the IDC. For those who don't know, the IDC was a group of Democrats who helped the Republicans stay in power in the state Senate. Adams very aggressively backed Jesse Hamilton, and Adams feuded with another, young progressive state senator, Zellner Myrie. And so, for someone like Zellner Myrie, for someone like Jabari Brisport, a mayor Eric Adams is not a pleasant sight. Whereas with Andrew Yang, I think he is weaker in the sense that he doesn't have any deep institutional ties. He's new to the city. He was never involved in city politics. He is more easily organized against. He is more persuadable. Eric Adams is not, I don't think Eric Adams will be moved by protests outside of Gracie Mansion, to be honest with you. I think if Eric Adams wants to do something, he's going to do it. This is someone, he said he will carry a gun on him in City Hall. That is who he is fundamentally. He's a retired
he's bringing
cop.
Some Trump energy.
A little bit. I mean, Eric Adams has, he's much smarter than Trump.
No, I just mean the cop. I mean the gun thing. Obviously, Trump's saying that shoot someone on Park.
Adams is also incendiary. Remember, Adams was telling people to go back to Ohio and Iowa last year before the pandemic. He's very much kind of a divide and conquer politician, and he's not afraid to rail against his enemies and take them on very directly. Whereas Andrew Yang, more happy-go-lucky, more willing to engage with the left, even if he blows them off sometimes, even if he doesn't know what he's talking about. Bradley Tusk called him an empty vessel. And I think for some on the left, they're like, oh my God, that means, evil corporate donors will fill the vessel. And that's very true. I wouldn't argue that. I take the other side of the argument as well, which is, well, if you're an empty vessel, organize and get in that vessel, fill it, right? The left can do that in New York City. So Andrew Yang may not be a picnic for the left, but Eric Adams, I called him in my Substack piece the machine mayor. He would come in with a lot of allies, a lot of cards to play. He is someone who is not easily intimidated. And I don't think people on the left quite understand what they would have on their hands if Eric Adams becomes mayor. He's very different than Bill de Blasio in that sense, where Bill de Blasio was goofy and bad on issues, but was generally supportive of left movements or hands off.
Okay.
Eric Adams could be very different.
One question that I have is, why did the New York Times endorse Garcia?
It's a good question. New York Times has almost single-handedly buoyed Catherine Garcia's campaign. She was polling in the mid-single digits for months and months and months. Don't forget they endorsed Andrew Cuomo over Cynthia Nixon. They made the kind of odd Klobuchar-Warren co-endorsement and were very dismissive of Bernie Sanders as well as Joe Biden. The irony of the Times' 2020 endorsement process was, I think, none of their top four candidates were anywhere near the top tier of the actual race when votes were counted. So, I think the Times is very enamored, as a lot of kind of affluent liberals are, with managerial experience, with resumes, with CVs. Garcia, to her credit, she is a very smart woman. She is very experienced. She is articulate.
Sounds like, besides the experience, you're basically describing Katie Halper. So, and I'm not going to name myself for mayor. So, So I want to bring in, we got a surprise guest. I'm really excited, guys. I don't want the Hillary Clinton effect to happen when you get distracted by the resume and experience. So I'm just going to call this guy New Yorker Sam. He follows the media. He's a politics junkie, and I like his style. That's what I'm going to say. Sam Alcoff. Hello, Sam.
My name is Sam Alcoff, and I'm just a New Yorker.
Sam Alcoff, just a New Yorker.
I'm a New Yorker as well.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So just because, Sam, you were having tech issues, I know, and I want to just bring you into the chat, literally. Ross's thesis in response to the question, who is worse for the left? Ross's take is that Adams is worse for the left because he's less. Hold on, Sam. Hold on. This is why I want you to have a discussion. You want to give your one sentence recap? You made a very great
Eric Adams is a lot stronger than Yang. It's as simple as that. Like, Eric Adams has the support of organized labor. Eric Adams has been steeped in the city for decades. Eric Adams is a former cop. He's going to carry a gun on him. You can't intimidate Eric Adams. You can't organize against him. Eric Adams wants to do something. He's going to do it. He's a black man. He can weaponize identity against the left and say they're all like white racists, and it could work. He is very close to the tabloids. The New York Post endorsed him. Daily News likes him. Andrew Yang would be a much weaker mayor, which, if you're a New Yorker, you go, oh, I want a strong mayor. Well, if you're the left, you don't want a strong mayor because a strong mayor is going to push you around. DSA, the professional left, can organize against Andrew Yang. They can persuade him to support certain policies. Ron Kim did that on decriminalizing sex work. Eric Adams is not persuadable. I've covered him for 8 years now. He's a very smart man, very tough man. He's a much harder opponent for the left.
So okay. I'm going to disagree, not just for argument's sake, though I do have to say, Ross, I'm a fan of your work, but I disagree a little bit. I think it's interesting that the very first thing that you list in your reason that Adams is bad for the left is that he's a friend of labor. Why is the fact that he's in good with some of the unions going to be a bad thing for the left?
I'm pro-labor. I'm in a labor union. I'm an NYU adjunct. I'm part of UAW 7902. Yeah. I support labor because if you study New York politics, you see that the large labor unions of New York State are always wary of left movements. Sometimes they'll work with DSA or WFP. Often they won't. Andrew Cuomo is a master at this game. Andrew Cuomo has very effectively co-opted the biggest labor unions in the state to tamp down the left if the left gets out of line. And the biggest labor unions in the state supported the Republican Senate majority because Andrew Cuomo wanted them to. So, Mayor Eric Adams can call up, 32BJ, DC 37, Hotel Trades Council, and say, hey, there's this like DSA candidate in 2022 running for the state legislature. I think he's a piece of crap. Endorse his opponent and spend, $200,000 against him or her. They'll do it. He's the mayor of New York City. They have no loyalty to the movement left. So, having institutional ties makes you strong. If you don't have those ties, you're weak. Eric Adams is strong. That just means it's that much harder to be able to move him on anything. So he can say, I am the left. Eric Adams, he's a very smart guy. He can say, I'm Black. I'm from Bed-Stuy. I've got labor. You're not the left. I'm the left. And he can beat you that way.
Yeah, I think that premise, respectfully, is a little off. I think that what labor does is it does not want to spend janitors and nurses' money on harebrained schemes and whatever the DSA comes up with at the drop of a hat. But we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Occupy Wall Street. And I remember when Bloomberg sent the police at like 6 or 7 in the morning to clear Zuccotti Park on because he was just sick of it. He just wanted to clear it out. And the at that point, Occupy Wall Street had been going on for several months, and the AFL-CIO sent out a mass email blast to its members and said, get down to Zuccotti Park and protect Occupy Wall Street from the NYPD. And if you talk to people that day, they said it felt like the cavalry arrived, right? Nobody expected the AFL-CIO to show up and protect Occupy Wall Street on September 17th. But after it had established itself for a few months, it was a more interesting animal. So I think that I don't totally buy into the premise that because Adams has ties to labor, that he's going to use that to sort of totally hedge over to the conservatives. I think that
wasn't his only. I just want to say that wasn't his only argument. That's one of them.
Yeah,
no. I don't think that's. But I just putting that out there. And then the second thing is I think that the problem is with Yang is Bradley Tusk, and so there's this argument that a weak mayor is better for the left. Except we've had de Blasio for the last 8 years, and I think he's been a pretty weak mayor, and he was terrible on Eric Garner. He was terrible on landlords. He's been terrible on a bunch of stuff. He was good at the very beginning when he properly handled the union contracts that Bloomberg had let sit there, and you had a vast transfer of wealth to working class New Yorkers. And he did some good stuff with universal pre-K, but after that, he totally got hammered in by the real estate, the landlords, and the NYPD, and he was weak. I mean, he was just constantly weak. He was always bending the knee. And the problem with Yang is Yang has no base. There's nobody who is for Yang, and so Yang is going to be dependent on Tusk's strategies. And so why do we think that Adams is worse than Yang?
Eric Adams has his own consultants. I think the Tusk thing is very overblown. Tusk is not a bad guy. I've profiled Bradley Tusk. I know him very well. Disagree with him on many issues. People overrate the hell out of Bradley Tusk. Like, he's not like the master wizard who can like determine the course of events. He can't even win this mayoral race, it seems like. So, Bradley Tusk can whisper in Andrew Yang's ear. He's one man and one consultant. The left movement can also organize against Andrew Yang. And Bill de Blasio was a weak mayor. Left movements flourished under Bill de Blasio because it didn't interfere with them. That's the difference. Andrew Cuomo very much tried his hardest to tamp down progressives whenever he could. Eric Adams could very much be in that same mold. That comes back to the labor point. You brought up the point with Occupy Wall Street. Great sentiment. That was a decade ago. Nice one-time thing. I'm talking about a decade of Andrew Cuomo weaponizing 1199 SEIU to support the Senate Republicans, weaponizing UFT even against progressives. I think labor is great, but Eric Adams having these ties to institutions very much makes him harder to organize against, especially when he can claim a mandate of the left. Whereas Yang is an empty vessel, but because he's weak, the left can do a lot more. There's room to operate. There's room to grow. Eric, you cited like the landlord slash like cop nexus.
Yeah.
I mean that's the base of both Yang and Adams. Like Adams has fundraised heavily from the real estate industry. He's a former police officer. He's a arch critic of defund. Andrew Yang really running a very similar type campaign. So you're choosing between two pro cop, two pro landlord candidates. One can be punched in the chin and knocked down by the left. One is going to catch the fist and break it. I take the weaker opponent.
My question though is the thing I don't understand is people always bring up that Adams is a cop, and I recognize that Adams is definitely running on I'm a cop. I'm the person who can reform the NYPD, but I also know about the problems with the NYPD. And for me, I think that there's a lot of older New Yorkers who remember that Adams, his springboard into being the borough president was 100 Blacks in law enforcement who care, because he was the guy the New York Times would go to for years when they wanted a cop who would be critical and say stuff against the NYPD.
Then he became a Republican for 5 years and talked about how Dinkins was soft on crime, which is how he spent the 90s, and then he pivoted back. So
Sam, you may have just caught a fist.
Been a lot of different Eric Adamses in his long career, but he's a reformer now. He is.
Oh wait, hold on. Before 1 second, we haven't, guys. This is such an amazing debate.
I'm not debating. Ross is smart as shit.
No, I know, it's discussions.
This is fun.
This is fun, right?
Yeah.
So we got Ava Farkas coming back into the fold. Ava Farkas, you know her from the show, of course. She's been here before. I hope I didn't catch her mid eating. Are you okay? You need 30 seconds? All right. She is with Met Council Action, housing organizer. And by the way, the reason we're focusing on who's worse than, it's not just a lesser of evilism argument. It's also because, there is something to who people will vote for and who people will rank or not rank. So we're going to get to who the person to vote for is. But first, we really want to sit with who the worst is. So, Ava, what say ye? Who's worse, Yang or Adams?
Okay, so I'm not speaking in my capacity in my professional capacity, because I just need to say a few disclaimers. So Met Council Action is a sister organization of Met Council on Housing. It's a 501c4, and we made some endorsements in a number of city council races, which people can check out at thetenant.org. That's our website. But we didn't make any endorsements in the mayoral race. So all these opinions are just my opinion.
Private citizen Ava.
Private citizen, yes. New Yorker. Okay. Who's worse? I really like that Yang wants to have like a party, like to mark the end of COVID. I was really into that idea, that platform idea. I don't know. I think they're both.
Someone's internet is partying too
Bradley
hard.
Tusk got to her. The all-powerful Bradley Tusk stopped her internet.
Yeah. Wow. Jesus Christ. We got to get Ava steady, Wi-Fi. Maybe this could really change things for housing issues. Well, Ava, hopefully you can reconnect. So I'm going to throw my hat in the race. I'm going to throw my hat in this game and say that I think that the thing that I do see as a potential danger is that Yang has the allure or the look of a progressive, not to us, but I think a lot of people see him as a disruptor or something, right? So I think one thing in Yang's, not in his favor. This is such a weird debate.
His column.
Is it in his column? No, it's against his column. Adams gets this point of badness, which gives him this point of goodness. Okay, this is my anti-Yang, pro-Adams point, but pro being why he's bad.
Yeah.
That I don't think anyone looks at Adams except for apparently Sam Alcoff, who has a soft spot for him as an authority for the New York Times when it comes to introspective cops. No one's going to look at Adams and think they have a good, a guy who's like thinking outside the box or progressive. I think it'll be full court press, I think. But yes, the lack of progressive sheen that Adams has, I think that can be one good thing that's one bad thing that makes him more dangerous. Yang more dangerous. Yes, that's it.
I mean, I think if I hear you correctly, I think Adams will be more nakedly transactional, whereas Yang, it will be more sort of quote unquote disruptive. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, I just think that people won't have their guards up as much with Yang as they will with Adams. But I don't think that's not decisive.
The press scrutiny, which is good, has been incredible toward Yang. I mean, Yang has been scrutinized tremendously by the leading newspapers in the city and by other outlets. So I think the media has been on to Yang for a very long time.
Yeah.
And he would have no honeymoon if he was elected mayor. I think Yang has the sort of everyman strength. He kind of connects to regular people. Adams is not as well known, can be more polarizing.
He's not like Yang has a real nice guy thing to him also.
He does. No, he definitely does. And I think both are fundamentally pro-police, like pro-real estate, candidates. I mean, in that sense, wouldn't be a departure necessarily from de Blasio, though I think de Blasio is more pro-tenant than he gets credit for. De Blasio, took kind of a two-pronged approach, which past mayors had as well, which is one, be very pro-developer in terms of working with real estate developers to build housing, private real estate developers, fundraise from them aggressively, be transactional, which wasn't great. But at the same time, Bill de Blasio was the first mayor, maybe ever, Ava could clarify for this, who appointed members to the Rent Guidelines Board, who froze rent. Like this was a big deal. Bloomberg's appointees would hike the rent every single year by a lot. And de Blasio, in his way, was definitely and it's a low bar to clear, keep in mind, was the most pro-tenant mayor New York had in decades. And you're talking about Giuliani, Dinkins, Bloomberg, again, Koch. So, de Blasio did try to balance things a little more toward the tenant side and did care about electing Democrats in Albany and turning the Senate around. He was bad at it, but he did care about it. And eventually it happened. And to be clear, for the viewers, most housing policy is set by the state, not the city. So when we talk about real estate policy and we talk about how tenants are impacted, a lot of these decisions are made by the state legislature and the governor, and the mayor can only advocate.
Okay, what say ye, Ava? Speaking as private citizen.
Yes. Speaking of the Rent Guidelines Board, I mean, we had a forum along with some other tenant organizations with all the candidates, and very few of them, I think only Diane Morales and Carlos Menchaca, made any commitment to consider a rent freeze or a rent rollback. I don't think Andrew Yang even knows what the Rent Guidelines Board is or how rent stabilization works. I mean, I think he said yes to some of our asks, but I don't think he was speaking with much expertise. And I was really concerned with how he talked about homeless New Yorkers and, just talked about how they're a deterrent to tourism and, how we have to prioritize the needs of the tourism industry to the human rights of people living on the streets. And it was really dehumanizing and awful. I think.
Teach them the code.
What?
Just teach them to code, the homeless people. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I'm not sure who's worse, but I think they're both equally bad for tenants and for housing issues and for, homeless New Yorkers.
Okay, so now that we're still stuck. So who should we vote for? We can't even, guys, I'm so concerned with how partisan this world is when we can't even come together on who we hate the most or who's the worst for the left. How are we ever going to come together to move things forward? But we're going to try to do it anyway. So